everyone, welcome to a new episode about finances and financial habits. Today, we're going to talk about 7 things rich people don't spend their money on, but middle class or lower class people often do. And no, it's not because rich people can't afford it. It's more because they've learned to value their money and spend it strategically. It's easy to imagine wealthy people buying whatever they want without thinking twice, right? But what if I told you that most millionaires are much more frugal than you think? We often see celebrities on yachts, in sports cars, or wearing designer clothes, but that's just a small fraction of wealthy people. In fact, studies show that 80 to 90% of millionaires prefer to live a modest and discreet lifestyle. Surprised? Well, stay tuned because today we're going to break down these 7 things that rich people don't spend money on and that you could also avoid to improve your finances. Let's start with the first point. Rich people don't buy things on a whim. That amazing jacket, those designer shoes, that expensive watch. Of course, they can be tempting. But buying things just because they look good in the window is a habit that most millionaires avoid. Instead of falling into impulse spending, they think very carefully about what to spend their money on. Sometimes we think that rich people buy expensive things just because they can afford them, but in reality, they don't usually spend on unnecessary things just to impress. As Warren Buffett himself, one of the richest men in the world, said, "If you buy things you don't need, soon you'll have to sell things you do need." So if you're tempted to spend on things you don't need, think twice. This is the first step to start having more control over your money. The second point can be somewhat controversial, and it is the topic of inheritances. Many people think that if you are a millionaire, you will automatically leave all your fortune to your children. But many modern millionaires are not so interested in leaving large inheritances to their children. In fact, people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have publicly stated that they prefer their children to find their own way and not depend on an inherited fortune. For example, Bill Gates said, "I want my children to find their own way in life, rather than receive a large inheritance from me." And other millionaires like Mark Zuckerberg think the same way. Of course, many of these entrepreneurs have allocated a large part of their fortunes to charities instead of leaving them to their families. So the next time you think about inheritances, remember that the important thing is not how much you receive, but what you do with the money you earn yourself. The third point is luxury brands. Yes, millionaires could fill their closets with designer clothes, but most of them don't. Although they have the money to buy expensive clothes, many opt for simple and comfortable clothes instead of luxury garments. Ingvar Kamprad, the founder of IKEA, admitted that he has never bought designer clothes. He prefers to look in second-hand stores or flea markets. Another example is Bill Gates, who, although he could buy dozens of expensive watches, continues to use his $10 watch. This shows us that wealth is not measured by the clothes or accessories we wear. Like them, we can remember that we are much more than the brands we wear, and that we don't need to prove our worth through clothing. The next point has to do with houses. It may surprise you, but not all rich people live in gigantic mansions or extravagant houses. Of course, their budget is higher, but most prefer modest and comfortable homes and avoid spending on unnecessarily luxurious properties. In fact, Warren Buffett, another of the richest men in the world, still lives in the first house he bought in 1958, which cost him only $31,500. The vast majority of millionaires look for the real value of their purchases and prefer to invest in properties that really bring them security and tranquility, not in places that only add unnecessary expenses and maintenance. The fifth point is very interesting, and it is something that many people do not know. Most rich people don't have multiple credit cards. Unlike what we might think, they don't walk around with a collection of cards in their wallets. In fact, 92% of millionaires only have one credit card, and most pay their expenses in cash or with debit. This is very different from what happens in the middle or lower class, where people tend to accumulate credit cards and finance purchases that they cannot really afford. With more cards, also come more fees, financial charges, and more possibilities of making impulse purchases. Instead, millionaires use their credit cards strategically and always pay their balances on time to avoid interest. So if you have multiple cards, consider if you really need them, because simplifying your finances can also help you have more control. Let's move on to the next point. Rich people don't spend on late fees. That's right. Millionaires are very diligent with their payments and avoid late fees or penalties at all costs. They know that every dollar counts, and they are not willing to give away their money in fees that could easily be avoided. Think about it. Every time you pay a bill late, you're literally throwing money away. You didn't enjoy it, you didn't use it, and yet it's an expense you could have avoided. Rich people prefer to set up automatic payments so they are never late and avoid these charges. One trick that you can also use to make sure your payments are always on time is to schedule them in your bank account. Not only will you be saving money, but you will also be taking care of your credit history. And we come to the last point. Rich people don't buy low-quality things. Although they can afford to buy anything, they prefer to invest in quality products that will last them a long time. For example, instead of buying cheap clothes that wear out quickly, they prefer to pay a little more for clothes that will last for years. The same applies to furniture, appliances, or anything they will use frequently. It's not that they always buy the most expensive thing, but they do look for things that offer durability and value. In the long run, this is a great strategy because they avoid having to replace things every so often, which, in the end, ends up being more expensive. So, before you buy something, think, is this something that is going to last me, or is it something I'm going to have to replace soon? Investing in quality is always a good decision. And there you have it. These are the 7 buying habits that rich people avoid and that you could also consider adopting. From avoiding impulse spending to not accumulating credit cards or paying late fees, these changes can make a big difference in your personal finances. At the end of the day, being financially smart doesn't mean you have to make millions, but that you use your money consciously and strategically. If you apply any of these tips, you will see how little by little you start saving more and building long-term financial stability. I hope this video has been helpful and that you can apply some of these tips in your daily life. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe, give it a like, and share it with your friends. And if you want to continue learning about how to improve your finances, I invite you to watch the next video, in which I will explain how to develop more skills to save and keep your money. See you in the next episode, and remember that true success is in how you manage what you have, not in how much you have.